Murder in the morning from the Hidden Killers podcast.
It's a really sick story, as are most of our stories. But what I think we need to look at here more than just the horrible crime that was committed, I think this is honestly more of a case of our mental health and medical system absolutely failing this mother.
Yes.
Because when we learn about the treatment that she was seeking and the treatment that she got before going into this psychotic rage and killing her children, it is a prime example of how fucked up our system is and how easy it is to get medications prescribed by one person that don't necessarily work well with the other medications that same person has prescribed. And when they're used incorrectly, can result in psychotic episodes, which I think is very likely what happened here.
And Tony, in this one, isn't there some issue possibly with postpartum depression as well?
Yeah, there's a lot that has to do with anxiety disorders, the postpartum depression, all of that.
And that's all real stuff.
Yeah.
And, to not have it taken care of and to not have her given the help that she desperately needed. And we'll get into the story, but as somebody that I've had some medical challenges and found out that my doctor hadn't tested me for something. Well, I had a hormone imbalance and I got it fixed. And guess what? Life is different. So it's just amazing when you've got a medical system that pays attention and can actually help you, how much that can impact your life. And this story is an absolute example of the system failing.
Yeah, and it happens way too much.
Yes.
It took place, Lindsay Clancy, a 32-year-old mother. She's been indicted on murder charges in the death of her 3 young children. The indictment was announced on Friday by the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office. Clancy is facing a hefty weight of charges, 3 counts each for the murder and strangulation and the tragic deaths of her children, 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and an infant, 8-month-old Callan Clancy. Previously, Clancy had been charged in the Plymouth District Court. However, following Friday's grand jury indictments, the gravity of the case has led it to being transferred to Plymouth Superior Court, which typically adjudicates more severe crimes. I can't think of anything a whole lot more severe than this. On January 24th, inside the Clancy's Duxbury residence, a horrendous series of events allegedly transpired. Prosecutors contend that Lindsay Clancy strangled her own children with exercise bands during a brief time that her husband Patrick was out fetching dinner. Following this act, in what may have been an attempt at suicide, Clancy is said to have leapt from a second-story window. In a heart-wrenching scene as described from the court documents, Patrick Clancy found his injured wife outside their home upon his return. And the chilling 911 call he made, Patrick could be heard frantically inquiring of his wife, "Where are the kids?" His subsequent discovery was grim. She replied, "In the basement." Replaying this harrowing 911 recording, Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Sprague remarked on Patrick's discovery, "He can then be heard screaming in agony and shock as he found the children. His screams seem to get louder and more agonized as time passes on." While the older children, Cora and Dawson, were declared deceased that very night, young Callan tragically passed away 3 days later in Boston Children's Hospital due to complications arising from asphyxia. During the February arraignment, the courtroom witnessed contrasting representations of Lindsay Clancy's mental health prior to the alleged crimes. Kevin J. Reddington, Clancy's defense attorney, portrayed her as a loving mother whose mental health had deteriorated noticeably post the birth of Callan, her youngest. In fact, Callan had been prescribed an extensive range of psychiatric medications from October 22 to January 2023. After the incident, Clancy allegedly informed her husband about experiencing a moment of psychosis and hearing a voice urging her to harm her children and herself. However, this was contested by prosecutors who cited Patrick Clancy's statement that his wife had never mentioned hearing voices or used the term psychosis before. Prosecutor Jennifer Sprague provided a very grim look at all of the murders that took place. Prosecutor Jennifer Sprague providing that grim perspective, alleging Clancy's actions were calculated. She said that Lindsay Clancy gave herself the time and privacy needed to commit the murders, and then she strangled each child in the place where they should have felt the safest, at home with their mom. Post these events, Lindsay Clancy was admitted to the hospital due to her sustained injuries and subsequently committed to Duxbury Hospital for psychiatric care. As per the latest updates in the DA's office on Friday, Clancy currently resides in a medical facility being held without bail. That's where it's at right now. I don't, this, from what we know about this case, this doesn't necessarily sound like a premeditated murder where she's sitting there planning this shit.
Right.
Did she find an opening? Yeah, she certainly did. But that also plays very much into the mindset of someone with a mental disorder or going through postpartum. It's not clear thinking. It's not rational thinking, but you are still thinking. It's not like you're sitting there as a vegetable going, "Ugh." If in something in your mind, if you want to end your life and for some reason you feel that you want to do the same thing to your children, you're going to look for an opening.
Absolutely. You're not going to do it in front of somebody who's going to step in and stop you. It's a whole mindset. It's a whole way of thinking. And I've known some women who've had postpartum depression. They are different human beings.
I've lived with one. Yeah, I've done it.
They're like catatonic at times. Like they can't, I mean, they are a shell of themselves and they desperately need help. And if something's not working, they need something different. It's just, it's a delicate balance.
It was a never ending hell that we went through. And it was always, I mean, and I was extremely supportive. I wasn't like, get over it. Like, no, like it was, let's go to the doctor. Let's figure this out. Like, how can I support you in this way and that way? And we went through it. But it was hell. And I can't imagine, and that's from the outside. I can't imagine being the person on the inside feeling all of these discombobulated thoughts that don't make a lot of sense. And while a lot of times they can recognize that they don't make any sense and they're not right, they're still there. And those feelings still are there. And the depression is still there. And it's a very real thing that people just, turn that frown upside down. Whatever dumbass thing.
Our society is so... Well, we've talked about this many times, but especially for a new mother, it's, you've got a new baby. What a great time. And it's anything but for some women. It's an absolutely horrific time of, your body is completely different. You're not sleeping. I mean, so you're dealing with all of these absolute crazy, batshit crazy things. And your hormones are just all over the place. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, to be honest with you.
And you know what? It doesn't necessarily help when your doctor prescribes 13 different psychiatric medications over the course of 3 months.
Jesus.
That's another big red flag to me in this case of...
Well, just throwing meds at a problem instead of saying, we need to figure this out. Maybe you need to be hospitalized.
Well, yes, without a doubt. She apparently has visited 2 different psychiatrists, initially diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, which means you're an anxious person pretty much. It's just like what kind of, it's like the catch-all. It's the catch-all. It's like, I think all of us have this at this point.
Yeah, me too.
But here's what she was prescribed over the course of 3 months. And if you've ever worked with any of these drugs or have taken them or know someone who has, these are not, you can't go on like SSRIs and then just get off and then mix other ones into them. No, I mean, that's like a recipe for utter fucking disaster. So I think they really need to take a look at the doctor prescribing these things and the pharmacy distributing them for, if they was all from the same pharmacy, that pharmacy should have seen some red flags right there going, we shouldn't be, this is not a good idea. They are the last line of defense, and there's a reason there's registered pharmacists and licensed pharmacists.
Otherwise, we'd have vending machines where you could just, put a sheet of paper in and it spits out your pills.
And unfortunately, there's doctors that are like that are pro. You want this? Okay. Well, because you just saw that ad and said, tell your doctor you need this. You shouldn't be telling your fucking doctor you need anything. Your doctor should be the one telling you what you need based on your symptoms. Now, what you saw in a 30-second ad during Wheel of Fortune. Let's go to, this is the 13 that she was on at different points in times. And a lot of times, from what I understand, Her husband, Patrick Clancy, told police that his wife would take as many as 4 medications a day, though she would take them as prescribed, but it would sometimes kind of be a mix of cocktails. So here's what she had in the cabinet: Ambien, Klonopin, Valium, Prozac, Lamictal, Atvian, Remeron, Seroquel, Zoloft, Trazodone, Hydrazone, or hydroxyzone, I don't know how to say this one, and triptyline, and
amitriptyline.
Yep,
That's been around for a while.
and buspirone, buspirine.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of fucking drugs that are.
And don't forget, these have a lot of side effects too. So it's not just that there's a lot of drugs; they have certain side effects.
Well,
and some of them could have been fighting each other.
Well, they're very much mental side effects too. So yes, I mean, you mix and match some of this shit together. It's a recipe to turn yourself into a fucking murderer or do whatever. I mean, just anything that's going to not make any sense because you're out of your mind, basically, on some of these drugs if mixed and matched incorrectly. Yeah, I'm not fucking surprised that this happened, seeing how her treatment seemed to be managed or lack thereof.
And here's something that I just found. She was a labor nurse. She worked in a freaking hospital. So knowing her, being in the system, she probably thought they're doing what's best.
Yep.
And she wasn't in any condition to question any of it.
And she was in and out of psychiatric hospitals and treatment facilities leading up to this, saying she was having suicidal thoughts of hurting her children. It was there. I mean, it was known. And I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine in some ways of being in that place. I was pretty close to a life like that at one point. Nobody died. But it's scary as shit. And you do wonder when you leave the house, what could possibly happen? And in a lot of cases, everything works out. But yeah, I mean, it's scary. And it's really something I can't imagine what Patrick was feeling when he got home and when he saw her flying out the window or lying in the yard, however he came upon her, and then where are the kids? I'm sure the first
trauma
thing
that he's experienced.
what he must have known in his heart when he saw her laying in the yard. I think my mind would be there already. Like, oh my God, if she's out here injured, what happened to the kids?
Yeah.
So, very horrible story. I think honestly, without knowing a whole lot more about this woman does need some grace. And they really do need to look at her mental health history, because it looks like she was trying to fight this, trying to do good, and it got out of control, and it was not managed well by those that were charged with managing this, because this is what can happen when that is done incorrectly. It doesn't always take someone who was born a killer to become a killer.
You're locked into the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.
You're consuming the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.